Madikizela Madia is our next speaker. She's also from UNISA. She started her higher education career at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in 2007. She teaches educational research methodologies at the honors and master's levels at UNISA. Her research areas of interest include higher education policy and research. To date, she has published a considerable number of journal articles, books, chapters, take part in conferences, and she's been here so long, we can almost say if it wasn't an academic conference, she's a Chomi. So please, Doctor, come join us here. And don't as you walk up here, there's some house rules that need to be sorted out. We're still expecting people to...
Hello everyone. I apologize, I wasn't very clear. I just thought about something. Some of you might have the same names. So it's better to put your first name and your last name on a piece of paper. I'm going to come around to every table for transparency and take from each table. Once I'm finished with your table, I'm not going to come back, and no one is allowed to put any more names inside. Okay? Then it's fair. It's transparent. Okay, this is for the lucky draw. Put your name on a small piece of paper. Just cut off a small piece of paper, like this size. Fold it up. First name, last name. I'll come to each table and take it. One per person, guys.
Thanks, and not 30 beers for one person.
Thank you. Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues. Let me first start by thanking everyone who thought of me when they were thinking of people that could come and contribute on this very important conference. It is important because of the topics or the theme that is being discussed here. The presenters yesterday and most importantly today, they have touched to issues that are very critical to my own career, especially Professor, my brother-in-law. Okay, I'm married to the Gajenis. So my brother-in-law has actually critiqued the presentation that I'm going to make here. Not criticized, don't think that it has been criticized, but it has been critiqued already, such that I felt like I should have been the first one to present before him, so that when he critiques, he will be adding to what I am going to be presenting here. So I'm going to be very short. Please give me, that is my title of this presentation. This title is actually drawing from the themes, sub-themes that were put on the website of this conference. We will understand that as we move forward. Please give me the next slide. So this is the outline of my presentation. In the introduction, I'm going to I'm going to present my analytical lens, and then I'm going to make 3 propositions about the institution or the university, not VUT, the university, the higher education system as a social space, and then I will make some conclusions. Among all the sub-themes that I saw on your website, that is the one that interested me more, which says educational inequality in South Africa is the gap widening. And it is asking, what is it that VUT can do to catch up? Now, as I was sitting here yesterday, looking at what was happening, what people were presenting, and then what happened in the evening when there were awards given to colleagues that have excelled in teaching, I thought to myself, if there was anything called catching up in the higher education system, if there was any of that, then it would mean VUT is in a good path to catching up. Because what you are doing is good, is excellent in my terms. So if there was anything called catching up, calling us all here is the part or the process of that catching up. Acknowledging people's excellence is the process of catching up. But the question is there anything called catching up in the higher education system? The next. All right. Now, the concepts here, the main concepts in that question are catching up, like I've said already, widening gap, educational inequality. We often use this concept in the education system unproblematically, as if their meaning is clear, as if everyone will understand what we mean by catching up, as if everyone will understand what we mean by the widening gap and the inequality. So I believe that, and I hope that my talk here will make us rethink the meaning of those concepts in the higher education system. But I want to position myself first as a spatial theorist, because every time in my research, in what I've already published and in what I'm still working on, I use the spatial lens to look at the problems. Presently, I am working on a research project, which Pauline is working with me on it. And in this project, we are looking at how institutions, institutional spaces enable or constrain academic practices. Academic practices as in teaching, research, academic engagement, everything that we do. How do our institutional spaces enable or constrain our practices? That is what we are looking at, because like I'm saying, I was observing what is happening now at VUT and what was happening yesterday. For me, because I don't stay in this space, I see it as an excellent, like I've just said earlier. But to us, space is not only that which is observable. Space includes the observable, yes, the physical buildings. It includes the people that move around the buildings. But importantly, space also includes people's experiences. How do you experience space? So for us, space is not as simple as walking from this point to that point. It is also about how do you experience it. And to us, experiences are very subjective, of course. You are not going to experience VUT the same way as I experience it. Now, if we listen to these people's experiences of the space, and then we put them down, we are in a position to make recommendations to say, people are experiencing this space in different ways, this way and this way, and then what is it that can be done to make this space enabling to people's practices? So my position is the reason why I was saying I have already been critiqued. It is because it draws my position of being a spatialist, which I call myself. It drew from Europe, from the spatial theorists like David Harvey, Doreen Massey, Edward Soja, Henry Lefebvre. Those are European people. But at least my tail is not beneath the hind legs, between the hind legs, because at least I am not taking everything that they are giving me. I am taking what works for me so that at the end of the day, I will be an African spatial theorist, that everyone who finds my work inspiring will draw from me to do their African spatial analysis. So they are, some of them are geographers, some are sociologists, but what is important is that from the 1970s, the spatial analysis of concepts or of phenomena, of problems, started in a movement that is called spatial 10. I'm in the spatial 10 as well because I believe that if we can use the spatial lens in analyzing the issues, then we can also be adding something, because it used to be only the historical issues, like how has history shaped what we are today, and not looking at what it is that we are experiencing now in the spaces. Okay. Now, my presentation is going to start by me inviting you to join me in looking at the higher education system as a social space. The higher education system as a social space. Now, by the space here, I do not mean that which we cross from A to B, like I've already said. And it obviously doesn't mean the absence of presence. But by social space, I mean the space that is constituted through ideologies, politics, which is the combination of the physical, the social, and the abstract dimension. That is how we think about space. Then the higher education system is composed of universities, to say the obvious. And the universities are also the social spaces. Now, the social space is unequally structured, with some universities at what we call metaphorical center in terms of resources, in terms of knowledge production, and so on, and others are at a metaphorical periphery. That has already been explained by the previous speaker, why that is the case. Now, that is where the question of catching up comes from. It comes from the fact that others are at the center and others are at the periphery. It is a question that suggests an impression that at any time in this higher education system, there will be uniformity. But is this possible, I ask? Now, in addressing this question, I base this address on Doreen Massey's 3 propositions of how we should conceptualize space. Let us go to the next slide. The first proposition is that space is a product of interrelations and interactions. It is a product that is composed of the exclusion or absence of relations, absence of interactions. In other words, it is a product of networks, exchanges, links, connections from inside here, VUT, and also globally. Who do we link with? Who do we interact with? When we do that, we are producing the space. Now, we all know this. That is why we are here. because without these interactions, then there is no university. We cannot be the university by ourselves. We all know this. However, if we agree that a university is a product of interrelations and interactions because it is a social space, then we should agree also that transformation, which I simply define as change in thinking, change in actions, change in behavior, change in attitudes, or even change in values. That's my simple definition of transformation. Now, if we agree that space is the product of interactions and interrelations, what it means is that transformation is key in a university system. But transformation should be at an individual level first. And then the groups, and then we can say the university is transformed. Because the university is composed of people that are interacting and interrelating. So if individuals are not transformed, then there is no transformation. It should start from the individual level and go to groups and then the university. That is my stand. Now, this is because the changes that are taking place in higher education, whether it's the conversational changes as we are doing now, or it is the practical changes, they disrupt the typical interactions and interrelations in the institutional spaces. For example, let me take the example of free education, which is the main key of this conference, main concept of this conference. Free education, colleagues, what it is saying is the higher education system as a social space is opening up to different caliber of people. Now we are going to receive different kinds of students to the kinds that we were used to teach. And then if we receive the different kinds of students, it means we have to invite more staff to work with these students. And if we invite more staff, we are inviting people that are not necessarily the same kind of people that we were used to work with. Now, what does this mean? This means the interrelations and the interconnections, the links that we are used to have to change. We have to change here. Our thinking has to change and be accommodative of the kinds of people that we are receiving because of free education. Now, the thing is, I have been observing in the higher education system. Okay, first of all, I am also a product of what I'm going to say now, that depending on where you studied, if you are a rural girl like me, you are going to speak English in isiXhosa. So people are not going to understand what you are saying, which is why I had to put the slides, so that you can be looking at slides while I'm talking, because you are not going to understand my English, because my English is in isiXhosa. I'm a Xhosa girl. Now, if you have a cognitive understanding of fluency in English as an indication of brains, you have to change that. Because there are children that are going to come from the deep rural Limpopo, deep rural Eastern Cape, and If it's Eastern Cape, let me tell you, they are mainly monolingual. We speak isiXhosa only. That is why when we get to Gauteng, we do not understand the other languages because we speak only isiXhosa. Now, how are you going to interact, interrelate to this child who cannot express himself or herself in a fluent language? That is a spatial issue. Now, the policy of post-school teaching and learning, I don't know how it's framed rightly, but it says transformation at a tertiary level says teach the child who is here. Do not teach the ideal child. The ideal child is the child who is able to express themselves fluently. Why would this child be at a university when they cannot write a sentence that is correctly framed? But the thing is, that is the child that you have in this space. Teach that child. Do not teach the idea. That is what the policy says. Now, what that says is transform yourself in this space. Change your thinking, change your values, change who you are. If you are used to dealing with those from Model C, understand that now the space is open because we have free education. They are coming in their numbers. The next. Then this next proposition, colleagues, I'm going to take much time here, a bit of a time. Here it says, and I want us to take this one first by understanding the higher education system as the social space, and then we'll come back to the university, single universities. But Massey here proposes that space is the sphere of the possibility of the existence of multiplicity in the sense of contemporaneous plurality, meaning many things happen at the same time, plurality during the same time, contemporaneously, things are happening same time in this space. Now, it is the sphere of distinct trajectories which are coexisting, the stories that are coexisting. It is the sphere of heterogeneity, meaning the same thing, that if we are talking about space, we should not think of space as a sphere of uniformity, as a sphere of having one kind of whatever. Everything in a space is in plurals. Now, this proposition implies the obvious, that there exists more of everything than one in any space. Now, these colleagues calls us as the actors within the higher education system, where there should be coexistence. It calls us to pause and think. Taking VUT as an example, as a case. If VUT is a component of the higher education system where there should be coexistence, multiplicity, plurality, why would we want to catch up with other institutions, which are also components of this wider space in their own right? Why do we want to catch up? Because space is a product of plurality. So why do we want to catch up? And which university universities do we want to catch up with anyway? The top 10? Where are they located? Are they at the center or at the periphery? In terms of resources, in terms of knowledge production, in terms of everything that we need here. Where are they? So what this is saying is that higher education system is delusionally arranged in a historical queue. We are made to believe that at some point we will catch up. It is the system, it is not us. It is the system that makes us think like that. The system disregards the multiplicity and the heterogeneity. Then the answer to this, it was referred to by Dr. Kasturi yesterday, who says there should be a critical realist approach which uncovers the underlying mechanisms. Every time we see something, every time we hear something being said, we should uncover, like Professor was saying when he was responding to the questions, to uncover what is the underlying cause of this. What is it that makes us want to catch up? What is the underlying mechanism? Now, of course, this we all know that the university system has been infected by neoliberalism. There's more emphasis on outputs, performativity, more than on intellectual inquiry and practice. We have been infected by the discourse of quantity, sometimes at the expense of quality. All this is the idea that is promoted by the impression that there shall be equality in the higher education system at some point in our lives. There is a need to deconstruct this very neoliberal notion of catching up and ask, who sets the standards? How are contextual realities positioned in the setting of those standards? What is the position of a sense of a local space and its particularities, the particularities of VUT? Where are they put when we are made to think that we can catch up at some point? Catching up means that, catching up would mean that in this competition, someone will slow down and the other person will increase the pace. But is that possible in a competitive higher education system? The next slide. No, not the next slide. Let's go there. Oh, yeah, the next one. Okay. Okay, now this is my proposition because, I'm down there. This is my proposition. My proposition is that universities should be encouraged to strive for excellence in their own right instead of catching up. I believe that heterogeneity bears more possibilities for higher education transformation than the idealized homogeneity or uniformity. If we can today breed an attitude of excellence in what constitutes VUT and try to make VUT excellent in its own right, in consideration of its own context, we will be able to produce a balanced higher education system space, considering that each university as a space has its own stories, its own memories, its own coexisting trajectories. That is my proposition. That instead of us being given the impression that at any point in time we will catch up, why don't we get or encourage ourselves through transforming our thinking that let us excel in what we are doing here. Next slide. This I say based also on this man Chapman, who comments that every college and university has a story to tell about itself, about its mission, its history, its traditions and aspirations. The institutional story is told through the campus, where the campus is located, what has been built there, and what has happened there. The campus is an unalloyed account of what the institution is all about. So if we can keep that to say, this is VUT, it is different. And also to think about why did the higher education system in South Africa, in the initial state, or at the firstly, why is it that the South African government decided to make universities of technology traditional universities? Why did they decide to make us different if then at the end of the day we need to catch up and be the same? Why is it that the requirements are the same, that as a lecturer, for you to grow and to become a professor, you must have published so many, regardless of whether you are at a university of technology or you are at a traditional university? Why are the standards the same when the universities are not the same type? And why are we conforming to that and accepting it and not questioning it? Why are we accepting that, okay, my promotion to professorship will also take the same standard as the promotion at UCT, but I'm at VUT? Why? Now, where do we place these facts, the facts that are put by Chapman's there, when we compare? I propose that there should not be one historical cue in the development of the higher education system. And certainly, no cue should be accepted by those who are figured as behind. We should not accept them. The institutions should be encouraged to define a path of their own, and as long as that path strengthens the higher education system, the interactions and the interrelations in this space should not be for competition, but for learning from each other, for contextual development. But again, what happens at institutional level now, which goes to the project that I said Pauline and I are engaging in, because okay, in all other higher education institutions that are in the project. The question is, how do we, as the institutions, promote plurality of excellence? How do institutional spaces enable the development of diverse identities, academic identities? Because each and everyone at a university has passion. Maybe you are passionate about research, you are passionate about teaching, you are passionate about academic engagement, community engagement. How does the institution as a space encourage you to develop that passion so that there could be plurality that strengthens this institution? If space is a dimension of simultaneity, how are academics supported to develop the academic identities they aspire to? Which of the institutional practices are enforced at the expense of others? How does that affect multiplicity and heterogeneity in this institutional space? How do the institutional spaces enable or constrain practices that would promote the production of space through multiplicity of skills, ideas, knowledges, and so on? Next slide. Now, this is the third proposition. This third proposition, we have already been talking about it, because it says space is always under construction. If we're talking about the university as a product of interaction, interrelations, if we are talking about the university as a product of multiplicity, homogeneity, then it means there will be no point where we will say it is done. This is the university as it should be. It is in a process of continuity. Now, it is never finished. It is never closed. Perhaps, therefore, we could say, we could imagine space as a simultaneity of stories so far. We can say, if it was possible to understand this VUT as a space now and today, I would say this is how your VUT is so far. But otherwise, this is not the end of it. It is still under construction. Therefore, let us not think about catching up, but about continuously strengthening our stories in our context to enrich the higher education space. Now, in conclusion, whether we look at it from a macro or micro perspective, space is political. That is why I said it is a product of ideologies, politics, and so on. It is political. Now, the political problem about space, the university as a space, is that we have been socialized into classifying universities not according to their excellence in uniqueness, but according to some predetermined meaning of prestige. Prestigious university. What does prestige mean? And who determines prestige? Under what mechanisms? Therefore, is the gap of inequality in education widening? We ask. And I say it might widen if institutions are in one historical queue of development. Should the gap be widening? And I say there should be no gap. Immediately, we transform our thinking to say, let us excel here and let us challenge whatever the factors that make us feel like competing. Let us challenge them and excel in what we are doing. Then there will be no gap. Now, in closing, let me just pass a short comment which I had not prepared, but it came to my mind as I was listening to the presentations. If we speak about curriculum Africanization, which of course is a contested concept, so regardless of our position about its meaning, my view is that our narrative will be incomplete if we exclude the institutional spaces. Because there is curriculum that is hidden in our spaces. If we agree that people are part of the space and interactions are part of the space, there is some curriculum that is in the people that our students learn. They learn, let me make an example. I am right now reading somebody's thesis. marking somebody's thesis. And it interested me so much because this person is arguing that students are not ready to go read in the library to find information by themselves. They depend on what the lecturer gives them. They depend on the notes they take in the classroom. They depend on the teaching guides. Now, this person says this in a very uncritical way. And as I'm reading this, I'm saying this is a spatial issue. Remember, I said I use space every time. I think spatially. This is a spatial issue. This is, say, I'm asking myself as I'm reading, why are the students resisting to go find information in the library? Why are they resisting to go find more information other than the one that you give them? And the answer in my head, I don't know the circumstances, but my answer is, it is because that is what you will assess them on. You only assess your assessment is only recall. You tell me what I told you in class. You can't give me anything else. So your assessment does not challenge them to go find more information. So why would you expect them to do anything else? But the student's response is determined by your actions in the space. So which means before you point fingers to the student, reflect on your own practice as an academic. The next slide is thank you.
Doctor, I was getting a shock when you said the next slide. After conclusion and closing, then another slide. Please can you help me give another big hand of appreciation? We are trying to catch up on the program, but I think we have to give time for